Thanks for checking out this movie review video. So let's talk about the 1979 film Tourist Trap. Now, I know some people immediately think, did he know about Tourist Trap prior to Joe Bob Briggs doing it on The Last Drive-In? No, I did not. So Joe Bob Briggs did introduce me to Tourist Trap, and that's one of the reasons I watched Joe Bob, is to be introduced to these crazy, often not seen films. So that said, I liked it so much that I went ahead and purchased through Diabolic DVD, but it is a Full Moon Features release, the Blu-ray for Tourist Trap. Now, I'm going to say I have not yet checked out the special features on this, but it does have an interview with the director David Schmoeller. It also has a commentary track with David Schmoeller, which both of those sound very interesting to me because I'd like to know kind of a lot of the behind the scenes and the why of things. So I very much look forward to digging into that at some point, but I haven't at the moment. So anyway, get yourself Tourist Trap. Plus the other thing is, like, look at this. Like, how creepy and weird is this? Very creepy and weird. But that's Tourist Trap. Okay, so I will say also, spoilers for this obviously, because it's an older film. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. It's available for streaming on Shudder when I'm doing this review. And also, if you've already seen it with Joe Bob, I'm not going to be talking about the same stuff that Joe Bob talked about. So if you watch what he did and you watch what I do, they will be different. We talk about things differently. So like I said, directed by David Schmoeller. He did films such as Crawl Space and Puppet Master. Now obviously Puppet Master was after Tourist Trap, and that was with Charles Band as well. Written by Schmoeller and J. Larry Carroll, who wrote mainly show episodes. J. Larry Carroll did mainly cartoons. He did a lot of cartoon episodes, which is weird when you see a movie like this and then you find out that one of the people who wrote it mainly was writing episodes of cartoons. It's just, it clashes. It's odd. Produced by Charles Band of Full Moon Features, but this was before Full Moon Features was a thing. I think Full Moon came to be in like 88 or something like that, so it'd be like, 9 years later. Stars Chuck Connors. If you haven't seen the Joe Bob Briggs episode where he does Tourist Trap, he talks a lot about Chuck Connors. He's a big Chuck Connors fan. That guy did a few films. He did a lot of films. He did a bunch of Western type films, but I just picked a few out. Geronimo, Old Yeller, the show Branded, and the movie Soylent Green, which is most important to us horror fans because it was a horror film. He was the third choice. I don't know if people knew this. He was the third choice for the titular role of Slauson/Davy in this film. The people who were second choice was Gig Young, which I looked him up and I'm like, okay, he was just in a bunch of older films that I haven't seen. Let me know if you know Gig Young, though. You can put some comments down there. Educate me on him. And one I do know, Jack Palance. Jack Palance was their number one choice to play Slauson. He passed, Gig Young passed, so they went Chuck Connors. And I'm going to be honest, I love that Chuck Connors is in this. I think he threw himself into the role. Say what you will about the film, it's not like a good film. It's just so odd and crazy that it's a lot of fun. But it's, I think Chuck Connors he brought his all. He really, really did. I think he was given a crazy, wacky concept and a crazy, wacky character, and he did a great job with it for what it was. So initially, this is another interesting thing. They wanted John Carpenter to direct this. They sought him out, but the financial package for him was going to be way too much in comparison to what the budget of the film was. So they had to say, no, we can't get John Carpenter. You have to consider that 1 year prior was when Halloween came out. So John Carpenter, did well with Halloween. They sought him for this. Obviously, a little too hard to get him at a budget price. So they ended up going with Schmoeller. The telekinetic powers in this film actually were not in the original script. That was an idea from Charles Band himself, and he insisted that in order for this film to be done, that had to be in the script. It had to be a part of it. Now, I like that it's in there because it's such a wacky extra layer to the film itself, but it also makes me wonder what would the film have been like if it didn't have that aspect to it. And I think it would be less enjoyable because it would have been more of like a kind of more straight up slasher type film, which, nowadays would just be more lost. The fact that the telekinesis was a part of it, I'm sure, hindered its ability to make money back then, but I think it increases its value now because, obviously people are trying to dredge up the most odd and out there horror films nowadays, so that's why this has kind of become more of a cult classic now, because it's out there. So bad at the time, but good for the future. There's a lot of movies like that. The house interior shots were done in an abandoned house that was actually going to be demolished. They actually paid the owner of that property some money to not demolish the house. They had to delay the demolition of it, I think like a week or two. It was shot in 24 days in the Los Angeles area, and they constructed the set for the beginning, the beginning part where Woody goes into that gas station, and then he's having all these things being chucked out of that, like dresser. What they did with that is they built the set at a 90-degree tilt, and so behind the dresser, they just have crew members just throwing things out. So instead of having to like throw it out, it's at the 90 degrees, so it just kind of falls out in a sense. And that's why it was going so fast towards Woody. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. It was actually attached to the ceiling when it was done at 90 degrees. But if you pay attention to the acting, like I said, Chuck Connors really put a lot into the role. I feel like a lot of people don't pay all that much attention to the acting in this because they just get so wrapped up in the crazy premise of it. At least not the first time you watch it. Multiple viewings, you start to kind of see what's more at work here. The directing, the camera work, the acting, all that type of stuff. So the setting and the broken down car in the beginning for me kind of reminded me of The Hills Have Eyes. I felt like the environment really looked like Hills Have Eyes, the whole broken down car and everything like that. Like, it just felt very Hills Have Eyes. I know that a lot of people talk about this being very Texas Chainsaw Massacre seeming, especially with the mask and everything. I see that as well. So for me, it's kind of, if you have to bring two films into it to describe it, I'd be like, it's kind of heavily inspired by The Hills Have Eyes and heavily inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion. They say there isn't air in the tire in the beginning when Woody's taking that tire to get air, but it rolls unbelievably well for not having air in the tire. Now, this is something I was watching the film with my buddy on the phone because we're social distancing, but Rich, and he was saying, he brought that up. He was just like, for not having air in the tire, it's rolling awfully well, and that's a very good point. It's just, small thing, but it's kind of funny when you notice that. Introducing a mannequin so early already signals that it's going to be a super weird film. Yes, because if you think about other films that have used mannequins in it, when can you think of a normal film that used mannequins? I feel like throwing things like mannequins in or dolls in or anything kind of like that just indicates immediately, this is going to be weird, this is going to be over the top, which, if I see that, I'm all in. I'm like, let's go, because that's what I'm looking for a lot of the time. The early scene in the gas station is pretty over the top because it just keeps going. With all the things being thrown at Woody, it just keeps going and going and going. Although I quite like the end to it where he gets the pipe in him, and then there's that noise, and you're like, wait, what is that noise of that running? And then you realize before you actually see it that it's blood running out of him through the pipe and onto the ground. I like that, how they pan down. You're hearing it clearly first, and then they pan down and show it. I think that's very effective filmmaking. And it makes it creepier of a situation and scarier too. The low-level grumbling that starts with that scene is very weird, but it's also very disturbing, and I think it helps bring a whole sheen of creepiness to the film very early on. It's kind of laying that track down, like introducing the mannequins early on, having all that stuff thrown early on. Like, those things are introducing the crazy early, introducing the disturbing, the weird, the creepy, and that, like, the grumbling noises, and then paired with later on all the oral type sounds of the women when the mannequins end up opening their mask, like the ha 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 ha, like that music is just, it's something. It really sets the mood appropriately. A vulture on the sign. When they were driving down the road, there's a vulture on the sign going to Slausson's. Clear foreshadowing, just like over the top type of foreshadowing. Maybe not as much back in 79, but still pretty clear. Why are they not concerned that they found Woody's tire and he's not there? Because if you remember, when they're driving, they pass the tire on the side of the road, and they're just like, oh, there's the Woody's tire. but everyone says it's just like, oh yeah, there's Woody's tire. Like, not concerned of the fact that there's Woody's tire and Woody is nowhere to be seen. And even if they did see it, wouldn't they stop and look around for Woody? Like, Woody could be face down in the bushes right there, right behind the tire. But they just keep going. They're just like, there's Woody's tire. Okay. Just didn't seem to make sense. The waterfall scene is cool. The waterfall looks amazing. So great scouting for the locations on that. That looks great. Water moccasins or not. The way Slauson just leers and casually chats is unbelievably creepy. Just another thing. And that's the thing I'm talking about with Connors doing such a good job with the role. Like, he's supposed to be off. He's supposed to be creepy. He's supposed to be weird. Even early on, when you're questioning whether he's okay or not okay, immediately when you meet this character of Slauson, like, you don't know what to think. You're like, is this some creepy dude who could harm them? Is this some guy who's just totally benign and he's just kind of a weird old coot? I think they even call him an old coot at one point. But like, when he's standing there and all the women are nude, which, you don't see, but they're nude in the water, he's just like very creepily just carrying on this conversation and won't leave and just leering at these women and making weird comments about like the water moccasins and don't be here when it gets dark, which is foreshadowing. By the end of the chat, you're not sure if maybe Slauson is just some old coot. Yeah, I already said that. Slauson repeatedly keeps trying to hide things by not answering questions. If you notice that, he does a lot of redirecting when questions are asked, which makes him very suspect. But I think the way they wrote his dialogue for redirecting those questions is actually kind of slick, in the point where it's believable that people would kind of move on from that, because he really does a good job of kind of redirecting the focus of the conversation. So it's believable. The appearance of Davy is so freaky, but he's just showing off when he's blowing up the bottles while choking Eileen with the scarf telekinetically. I get like telekinetically like choking her with the scarf and stuff when he shows up, but then he starts making all the bottles explode, and I'm just like, it's so over the top. But I think this actually speaks to a thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later, because there are other examples of it in the film where it kind of seems that Davy, or Slauson in his Davy mindset, is really into just making people more fearful. He's into like playing around with people, just causing more fear. It's not just all about the killing for him. It's about the ambiance and getting the fear out of people, getting their reactions. So that's why he does all this extra stuff. That's what it seems like to me. And like I said, I'll point more of those out as I keep going in my notes. How realistic the mannequins are is talked about so much in the beginning of this film that it's very, very clear, because of how much they're talking about it, that there's more to these actual mannequins. This is one of those things where it probably would have been better if they kept it more subtle, to just, make an offhanded comment about, oh my gosh, they look so real or something. But they keep talking about them so much, and there's so much focus on them in like the wax museum area, that you are like beaten over the head with, there's obviously something else going on with these. So I think they could have like pulled that back a little bit. It would have been better. But then again, I'm making the suggestion, and it's just an over-the-top crazy film anyway. You almost feel like these people deserve it when they get killed, because they are breaking into a house. Like, they're just breaking in, and they keep breaking into this house. And, I know Joe Bob even pointed it out, that when the one character, I forget who it was, goes and doesn't just like go in a window on the first floor, like climbs a trellis and breaks into a window on the second floor. Like, I don't feel that bad for you when you're gonna get it, because you're doing too much snooping, like way too much snooping. You're breaking into someone's house, literally. It's like these people want to be killed. It's crazy. You do get a Leatherface vibe from Davy. I definitely felt that way. I'm sure a lot of people did. It's so unsettling and odd when the mannequins keep coming to life and moving in on people. Yeah, that is just like the way they shot the mannequins, the way they articulate them, the way they do the mouths like gaping open when they drop open, and the noises associated with the mannequins, just so creepy. Works really, really well in my opinion. The basement scene is potentially one of my favorite scenes, because that's when you first start getting Davy talking, because prior to that he doesn't talk at all, which causes the most torment for the tourists, actually, because he's really playing with their minds. And then this is actually when the plaster portion goes on with the face, and he's talking about, you know, people dying of fright and everything. And that goes back to what I'm talking about before, of like, he loves the fear. He loves working people up before he actually kills them. Like, it's about the whole experience for him, not just, I just need to kill this person. It's, I need them to be afraid of me. I need to cause as much fear as possible. I need to see it in their face. I need to hear it in their voice, you know, all that stuff. And that really plays out in that basement scene. Plus, like, the plastering. And the way Chuck Connors changes his voice is just so funny. The whole talk about his powers is funny. The low voice and sing-song parts are just plain unhinged. And it works for this film, especially because, like I said, it's one of those kind of over-the-top, ridiculous films. The part with Davey holding the yelling mannequin head saying, "Be my friend," as he chases Molly, hilarious. That's another one of my favorite scenes. It's so over the top, it's so weird, it's so funny, like, and that's a comedic moment. Like, clearly, he's holding that mannequin head, and it's yelling, and he's like, "Be my friend, be my friend." Who comes up with this? You know what I mean? Like, who comes up with it? But it works, in the context of this. I also love the scene of Slauson and Davey having a meal. It's funny because it's that wacky interaction between Slauson and Davey, and it's just, it's weird. And once again, it's just so weird. So it seems Slauson has a bunch of personalities because of when he has the blonde wig on and he's playing with the baby doll. Yeah, you get the idea that clearly in this, it's not just Slauson and Davey as the two personalities, but his brain is kind of fractured into multiple personalities that are played out with different wigs and masks and all that type of stuff. So, but then there's this kind of question throughout it of like, how connected is he to it? Because at times it seems like he's aware that he's acting as Davey or someone else, and other times he's disassociated from that. So it's really hard to know like how much he's aware of and how much he's not aware of within the context of the film. So yeah. He's just showing off again with the mannequin shooting, but that's part of tormenting his prey. That's another one of those moments when it's back in the wax museum and they just keep shooting around the room. That's just another way to work up his victim. Work her up. And, you know, another one of those examples. The music with the breathy female noises is probably the most effective creep factor music in the film. That is the best piece of music within it because the environment that it creates. I feel like Slauson was planning to make one of the girls his new wife all along. You know, not just when he's talking to Molly in the end. It feels like as soon as he saw this group of kids, he was like, I'm going to make one of them my wife. We'll see which one lives the longest, and then that's the one. That's kind of what it seemed like to me. The scene admitting to killing his wife and brother for Horan shows everything was a lie at this point, but you also do kind of feel for him a little bit because of the whole Horan situation. But I feel like this is the moment where it really shows you the moment where he went from just being Slauson to being Slauson and Davey and whatever other personalities he's harboring in his head at this point in the film, because that was such a terrible moment in his life. It was so traumatic that it basically caused his brain to fracture and caused all those multiple personalities, which I would then argue that's actually what they insinuate happens to Molly at the end of the film as well, as she's driving away and she now has all these mannequins in her car, showing just like Slauson had all these mannequins as his friends, she now has all these mannequins as her friends. And now her brain, because of her traumatic experience, has also shattered, and she now has the same thing going on as Slauson. So it really sets it up for another film, which obviously we didn't get, but would be very interesting for someone to do now, of her being Slauson and doing the same type of thing. I would pay to see that. When Jerry is revealed to be a mannequin, it's a shock. All hope is gone at that point. It's a great kind of red herring of hope, where he shows up and Jerry's like, I'm going to help you, I'm getting you out of here, and then you realize, oh my gosh, he is one of these mechanical mannequins. All hope is lost for Molly. It's all over. It was another one of those ruses by Slauson, much like when he gave her the shotgun with blanks. same thing. It was that whole, playing with her, upping the fear, making her feel hopeless. And part of that at the end with Jerry, I think, has a lot to do with the fact that he wants her to accept, being his new bride, basically, and saying, look, you thought you had hope. There's absolutely no hope after this. Just stick with me. But obviously that doesn't work out for Slauson. Slauson dies in a lame way, by the way. The way he just gets whacked with the tomahawk in the neck, it's not cool. Or is an axe. It was dumb. They could have done something a lot better. It seems like Slauson enjoys playing both sides. Befriending the tourists, he seems to actually enjoy, but then he also likes it on the other end, probably a lot more, because, everything's going to that point. And part of the befriending, him liking the befriending, is probably just he's lonely. He's got nobody else except what's rolling around in his head. The part where he gives Molly the gun with blanks shows he likes playing with his prey. Yeah, I kind of already talked about that. But like I said, I cited a bunch of instances where that just keeps happening throughout the film. I think that's one of the best things about the film, in my opinion, are all the times where he's just messing with them before he's actually killing them. So, all right. So that's all I have to say about Tourist Trap. Obviously, it's a fun time. So this is one of the films where I'm going to do two different types of ratings. I'm going to do a star rating in the pantheon of all film, like as an actual film, and then I'll do a star rating as so bad it's awesome. So the normal rating out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I mean, you got to give it like a 1.5 for like actual filmmaking. But for a so great it's bad, or so bad it's great, I mean, I gotta throw it at like a 4. Like 4 stars for that, because it's so wacky, it's so out there, there's so much nutty stuff going on. Yeah. Actually, I mean, I might give it 2 stars, actually, for the regular version. Because the directing's actually pretty well done. The acting, for the most part, is pretty good. Anyway. But that's it. Do me a quick favor real fast. Hit that subscribe if you are not a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, hit that thumbs up just to let me know you're still watching and to keep encouraging me. Put some comments down there. Let's talk about Tourist Trap and whatever else you want to, horror-wise. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. But thanks for checking this out, and until next time, keep it brutal.